Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Doug Las Vegas Bets UFC betting show. After a rough week for me last week in UFC OKC, had some decent calls on the Tommy McMillan fight. Didn't have the guts to pull the trigger. We lost on Austin Bashi and DDP inside the distance. But we are on to another week here with an early start time as the UFC heads to Abu Dhabi. This is a bit of a tricky card to navigate betting-wise. There's lots of huge favorites, lots of fresh faces with interesting records. We'll just say undefeated guys, but go back, evaluate them. And I'm going to give my thoughts on a lot of the fights here. Still have my underdog of the week. I'm still looking into the prop play of the week, but I got a couple spots that I've kind of started to target. So we'll get into all that and more. Without further ado, we will start off with that main event. All right, we'll kick things off here with this main event. Short notice matchup between Magomed Ankalaev and Bogdan Guskov after Khalil Roundtree pulled out not too long ago, just a few weeks, but thankfully Bogdan Guskov was already in camp for a fight not too far from now against Jan Blachowicz, which was going to be the rematch. We'll start here by breaking down Ankalaev. He is a well-rounded guy, one of the best in the division, obviously was a champion going into his last fight, the only guy to beat Alex Pereira at light heavyweight. I quite like Big Onk's style. Honestly, I think a lot of people find him boring, but I think it's kind of cool to watch him just break down other technical kickboxers over the course of a fight. I quite enjoy his performance against Alexander Rakic, where it was a very close first round, and he just physically wore on Rakic to the point where Rakic was so done by the end of the fight. He looked so tired, so damaged, that even though Ankalaev didn't get the finish, he broke Rakic over the course of that fight, and I think that style is pretty cool, and he does have some good power. Obviously, was able to knock Johnny Walker out, hurt Alex Pereira badly there at the end of the third round. Now, coming in off that first round loss, it's a pretty ugly look. I mean, Alex Pereira just walked forward, kind of shot him with a big right hand, and that was all she wrote. But I mean, when you're fighting Alex Pereira, a guy with that kind of power at the weight class, where we've seen time and time again, if he touches you, it's probably not going to end well. I don't think this is some huge he's super chinny. See, the Thiago Santos dropping him was a tell for the future. I just don't really think that's the case. I don't think he's extremely chinny. I think his defense does carry him more than his durability, probably, because it's generally pretty hard to land head strikes on Ankalaev. But I don't think his chin is a massive liability per se. Also, his wrestling, his wrestling's an interesting discussion, because I think it was kind of overrated going into the Pereira fight. Now it might even be underrated. We hear everyone say, "Oh, he's not a wrestler, he's a striker." Very true. He's a striking-based fighter. But when he mixes in the wrestling, it's typically very effective. Alex Pereira did well to defend it in the fourth round of their first fight, even though the clinch work still ended up winning Ankalaev the fight. We have seen him use that wrestling against guys like Jan Blachowicz, Anthony Smith. He got on top of, even though Smith was injured in that one. So I do think for the division especially, he has one of the stronger ground games, and Bogdan is not very strong on the ground. I'll get into that, but when you look at the Billy Alicana matchup, Billy Alicana is not a very high-level fighter, and he was able to take the back and control Guskov for the entire first round. So that's just an interesting note. And as we transition over to Guskov here, I will acknowledge I was wrong about Guskov coming into the UFC. I thought he was way lower level. I didn't think he was going to become a ranked fighter, let alone a top 10 guy, which he is now, fighting for the number one spot, essentially, fighting the guy coming off the championship. So, yeah, I mean, when I looked at him coming in, I saw the finish loss in the regional scene. I backed Uzdemir inside the distance against him coming into the UFC. And I thought that just kind of confirmed the suspicion that this guy didn't really have the durability to hang with the powerhouses in the UFC. He was just a bully on the regional scene. not necessarily true because he was powerful enough to do it to a lot of guys in the UFC. And when you look at the Ryan Spann fight in particular, that durability is definitely not as big a concern as I thought it was coming in. He took some big shots from Ryan Spann, as much as, we can say whatever about Ryan Spann. The guy obviously hits pretty hard. So I thought that was a good look for his durability and answered some questions. I mentioned the Billy Elikana fight where, Elikana got the back, controlled him. I thought that kind of showed a little bit of helplessness on the ground, lack of effort to escape, although he did, he rode it out and moved on to the next round where he survived and got the sub against a completely exhausted Elikana. Still, I just didn't think that was a good look for his ground game. Came back and then got a huge TKO against Krylov. So when you look at him, it's easy to say it's knockout or bust. Because for the most part it is. I mean, just look at the last fight against Jan Blachowicz, and I think it's going to tell the story of his fights with a lot of big light heavyweights. If he touches the chin, it's going to get real questionable because he can hurt anybody. He has serious power in his hands. That being said, the guy is just not a great minute winner. Even Ryan Spann was winning the round one against him. Billy Elikana won round one against him. And then the other ones, Zach Pauga and Nikita Krylov, he got the knockouts. And then you look at the Jan Blachowicz fight in the round that he didn't get the 10-8 because he almost knocked Blachowicz out, lost both rounds. So this guy, he's not a great round winner, not a great minute winner in general, which, I think that's going to add up against Ankalaev. I hate to just copy and paste someone's last performance and say it's going to be similar, or not last, but a recent performance. But I look at the Alexander Rakic fight, and I kind of think it's similar, especially with the short notice aspect. I mean, not that Guskov and Rakic are similar as fighters. I'm not saying that, but I could definitely see Ankalaev just being consistent enough to break Guskov down to in the later rounds. I think Ankalaev is going to be much better off in the later rounds. We haven't necessarily seen cardio issues from Guskov, but he's not a guy who's going to be able to push the pace. And as much as I said his durability is better than I thought, still questionable defense. So he's going to take the damage. He's going to take more shots from Ankalaev, and that damage is going to build up. And we saw how that worked against Alexander Rakic, a guy who, wasn't a championship level fighter, and it wore him down and completely had him broken by the end of the third round. Even though he didn't get the finish, he had Rakic out of there pretty much. I mean, there was just no offense coming back. The fight was done. So I look at this one and I think if Guskov doesn't, walk him down, catch him in the early rounds, I think by round 3 that damage will have mounted up. And you look at the props, I think a lot of people are pretty surprised to see Ankalaev by decision at such a big number because he has historically been more of a decision guy. Like I said, decision against Rakic, got the decision in the win against Pereira. Before that, mostly decisions except for the Anthony Smith injury and a chinny Johnny Walker. So, I get why people are intrigued by that. I would say probably just go safer maybe and go the same game and parlay with him over 1.5 at -115. I don't think he's going to get him out of there in the first round because it's where Guskov's dangerous. So he has to respect him a lot there. But I think once it starts to mount, once Guskov starts to slow and the threat starts to diminish, Ankh can just do more and more damage. And by rounds 4 and 5, I think it'll have mounted up so much that I'm just not confident Guskov can take it, especially when we have seen him put out multiple times before. It's not like this is some granite chin guy. You could argue that he still has serious durability concerns. I mean, there was really only the one fight where I was impressed by his chin, and that was against Ryan Spann. So it's hard to gauge where a guy's chin's going to be at on short notice. Maybe he has a tough weight cut too. You never know. So I do think Ankalaev gets a TKO in the later rounds in this one, rounds 4 or 5. I'd say he probably gets the finish. As far as betting, like I said, I'm considering that Ankalaev plus over 1.5, even just the over 2.5 straights already plus money. I think those are decent spots. I think the over 2.5 you might start sweating a little bit, but yeah. Overall, I think Ankalaev by decision is just. It's going to be a long time in there for Guskov with a very consistent fighter who does have pop in his hands, not just a decision machine. So give me Ankalaev here. Give me him by 4th or 5th round TKO. All right, I'm going to do the co-main. I'm sorry if the audio gets rough. It is pouring rain, and I would like to get this recorded, so I'm just going to try. If you can hear lightning and stuff in the background, my apologies. But we got this flyweight co-main here between former title challenger Steve Erceg and the returning Ramazan Temirov. Talking Steve Erceg, this is a really well-rounded, skilled fighter. You know, you look at that 3-fight losing streak, and a lot of people, I think, got very concerned. Especially, I almost think the most concerning fight for him was the Osborne fight, because it was supposed to be this nice bounce back. The guy had a 3-fight losing streak. Osborne, with respect to him, is a solid fighter, dangerous early, but unranked. And then seeing Erceg almost get finished by him early, it was like, oh, the Kai Car France thing, maybe this guy doesn't have a very good chin. Although he did come back to win the minutes in that one and end up taking the decision over rounds 2 and 3, which, I mean, if you survive early against Ode, he typically slows down pretty good and you can win the later rounds. So I don't know that I'd say it was an impressive performance, but he got the job done. He showed that he can recover. It's not just a matter of like, oh, he gets hit and goes down and he'll curl up. So that was good. That was a good sign. And then the Tim Elliott fight. You know, Tim Elliott's a tricky guy on the feet and on the ground. Not finishing Tim Elliott isn't the end of the world. Even losing a round to Tim Elliott is not the end of the world at all. I think Steve Erceg did very well in that one to do what he had to do, which was keep it a technical boxing match as much as he could, land his shots, don't get overzealous to give Elliott opportunities to do weird shit, and that's exactly what Erceg did to win the decision. Now, on the other side, you got Ramazan Temirov. This guy is a powerful flyweight. This guy is one of the rare power punchers at flyweight. We already talked about the 2 losses to Kai Car France and Ode Osborne, which, I mean, they have to give anyone hesitation picking Erceg here against anyone. But when you look at Temirov's resume, you look at how he got to the UFC with back-to-back first-round knockouts in Rizin, and then he comes into the UFC, gets first-round knockout over CJ Vergara. You know, oh boy. And against Charles Johnson, yeah, he didn't knock Charles Johnson out, but he did land on him an awful lot over the first 2 rounds, enough to win the decision. A very classic Charles Johnson fight at the time, because Charles Johnson's notably durable as well. Well, at the time, we saw him get knocked out by Alex Perez earlier this year, and, you know, things have kind of faded off for Charles Johnson. But Charles Johnson was very durable at the time, had never been finished. So I don't think not finishing him was a bad thing. I think it was good experience for him to go 3 rounds with a guy who puts the pace on like Charles Johnson in that. Then obviously he's been suspended for over a year now, was booked to fight Asual Mabayev later that year against Charles Johnson and got suspended for PED usage. So it's tough to say how much that impacted him. I mean, we've seen guys come back from PED suspensions and look the same all the time. There's a pretty decent chance he's just on different PEDs now, allegedly, or whatever you have to say to cover that. Yeah, I'm kind of just expecting a relatively similar fighter. He's 29, so he still might be improving. He's still gaining the UFC experience, although there is the layoff. So there's concerns and positives that end up balancing out there. Uh, Overall, in this one, I am going to end up picking Erceg by decision, although I'll say this. I think if you're backing Erceg, you back him on the money line. If you're on the Temirov side, you can just go with the KO. I think Temirov decision is possible, but I find it a pretty low percentage outcome considering I think he has to hurt Erceg in order to win rounds. And I think if he hurts Erceg, then there's a good chance he finishes him. So I do think if you're backing Temirov, it's Temirov by KO or Erceg money line here in my mind. I tend to lean Erceg as an overall pick. So I'm gonna say my pick right now is Steve Erceg, although I reserve the right to randomly drop a play on Ramazan Temirov later in the week on my socials if I want to. Make sure you go follow me on my socials so you don't miss that. Apologies for fence sitting on the pick, but I think some fights are just to pick them for a reason when both guys have clear paths that like it's hard to gauge which one is more likely. So yeah, give me Erceg by decision as a pure pick, but be fair warned. All right, we got our first nuclear favorite of the card as Islam Dulatov takes on Wellington Turman here. With Dulatov comes off Contender Series with a lot of hype. The guy's a male model, so always looks in shape. I think that just kind of garnered a fan base of its own because of the hilarious contrast between male modeling and fighting, and the guy does both. It seems like he just kind of fights for fun. I imagine he makes a lot of money off that modeling. Not questioning his dedication to fighting, but anyways, it looked good in his debut against Adam Fugit. I quite liked the performance, actually. I think it's pretty easy to, criticize the performance against a lower level guy like Adam Fugit. But Fugit's kind of an awkward, tricky fighter. And I think Dulatov did really well to stay composed, pick his shots, land good ones. And then when Fugit tried to initiate the wrestling, did the right things, stayed calm, got to the fence. You could tell he thought about going for a guillotine for a second, decided better of it, and decided to pivot out and frame off. I thought the balance looked good. And again, yeah, it's Adam Fugit, but if you're doing these right things against Adam Fugit, I have some confidence that you'll do them as well against higher level opponents. People, I mean, if your reaction, your just immediate reaction is one thing in a cage, and it's probably going to keep being that. So then the striking was where he shined. The power in his hands, the elbows, it's evident. He lands, there's impact, he lands clean, he picks his shots nicely, like I said. Gets nice extension on his shots because he's got a real long reach. He knows how to land at the end of his shots, which is really good. It helps him maximize that reach advantage when he has it as well. On the other side, Wellington Turman comes in here off a very long layoff. We saw him up at middleweight, come down to welterweight. Still just 29 years old, so the guy's not like washed up. I don't know why when he came in, probably because of the layoff. I was expecting him to be in his mid-30s or something. But yeah, he came into the UFC very young, had a pretty tough run at middleweight, fighting a lot of low-level competition. Getting fit or losing to Carl Roberson, Andrew Sanchez, getting just wins over Sam Alvey, Marcus Perez, and Misha Serkinov. Then his move down to welterweight hasn't gone great so far with the loss to Randy Brown, and most recently he got finished by Jared Night Train Gooden now 2.5 years ago. So this has been a long time since we've seen him. Last time we saw him was the Jared Gooden fight where, had some decent boxing exchanges early, ended up getting a takedown to seal up the first round, staying on top. Then at the start of round 2, he got touched a little bit, wobbled around. Jared Gooden got on top and got the finish. So yeah, I mean, the story on him, the decent grappling, he's tried to round out the striking a little bit. His dangerous submission threat on the ground. But, when facing other grapplers, he has struggled to out-grapple stronger wrestlers. So his MMA grappling, not traditionally the best, and then his striking defense not necessarily the best, with some chin concern having taken a couple knockout losses, and that Jared Gooden loss might as well have been a knockout loss as well. So the price tag here is, like I said, Dulatov's a nuclear favorite. I don't really know what you do with it. Some people are betting him first round KO. Some people got plus money on that. Now it's like minus 175. You can't, I mean, now it's minus 175. You can't. That's just, why are you betting a first round KO at minus 175? Even if it's the most likely outcome, you don't need to be laying that kind of money on that specific prop. Yeah, that being said, Islam Dulatov by first round knockout is the pick here. I think that's, it could be first round, it could be second round. Maybe he finds a submission after knocking him down. I think there are those variables that always take place in MMA. You just never know. And he's not a guy who rushes. He doesn't go crazy aggressive despite having all these finishes on his record. He lets the finish come to him. He let the Fugit finish come to him. He patiently picked his shots and ended up landing one that put him down. Took advantage and, has good finishing instincts. When he knows when he's got someone hurt, go for the kill. So yeah, not too much nuance on this breakdown when we're talking about two guys who have been away over a year, 2.5 years. One's minus 700. Give me the minus 700 and by first round knockout. What a bold take. All right, we got a couple lightweight debuts here in a matchup of undefeated guys as Magomed Zaynukov or Chanko comes in here to take on Damian Rzepecki or Rzepecki. Yeah. We'll start with Chanko. Comes in here with a lot of fanfare, and it's it gives me headaches to explain why. There's people called him John Pork, I guess, when he got called Chanko by Islam in a video. Everyone heard John Pork, made a meme about it. It came back around when he fought on Contender Series, and now everyone just calls him John Pork. But he said he doesn't like it, so I'm gonna call him Chanko, and not acknowledge that again. Chanko is a great Muay Thai striker. He comes out of that same camp with Islam Makhachev, as I mentioned. He was talking about him in that video. He's got a solid wrestling game as well. Good, well-rounded fighter. He's 8-0. Had a good showing on Contender Series where he broke the lightweight record. 4 strikes landed, setting a high pace early. He did get dropped in round 1, but was still able to outland his opponent massively in that round and continued to walk him down. Through rounds 2 and 3, he's a thick lightweight without, maybe not the most one-shot power, but he lands impactful shots. He swings with heavy intent, big, powerful shots, heavy leg kicks that he loads up on. So yeah, I think he's got a good style to watch, a good style for fun fights, to take some damage and give some more. So I think that's part of why he's getting all these fans. I mean, obviously the shitty meme has something to do with it, but I think a lot of people watched this Contender Series fight and became instant fans because he put on a great show. On the other side, Damian Rzepecki, he's 10-0. He comes in with a couple decent regional performances. Just 24 years old. He's a little young. I think he can still fill out a bit more for the weight class. That being said, he's shown a pretty well-rounded skill set. I mean, he's used his wrestling. He stays on the pressure with the striking. Mostly southpaw with good straight shots, puts the combination together. I mean, he's a fighter that I don't want to poke technical holes in because he does the right things on the feet. He's shown he's not completely incompetent on the ground. He can mix that in offensively as well, and he's undefeated coming in here. But when I look at him, if you're 24 years old coming into the UFC, I'm expecting a really good athlete or some kind of protege in some kind of martial art, right? Like the advantage of the younger 20-year-olds in fighting is purely the youth athleticism, because so much of fighting, so much of it's predicated on experience, having been there, done that, having faced this certain kind of style. So when you haven't, you have to make up for that by being an A1 athlete or having a huge advantage in some certain form of martial arts. And that's what I'm really it's coming down to with my pick here, because I do think Rzepecki can keep up with him. I think he can take a round off of him, keep him competitive with the striking. I don't think he's going to get worn down. I don't think he's going to get dominated on the ground. I think it's possible he gets taken down a few times and held there for rounds if Chanko decides to go with that style game plan. But I tend to think it's going to be a kickboxing match for the most part. And when Rzepecki isn't going to be able to walk him down because he's not going to be this big physical imposing guy, Chanko's going to be the bigger, thicker guy swinging harder. I mean, they're the same height, and Rzepecki's got longer reach, but I think Chanko's a lot more filled out for the weight class. He's over 30 years old. This guy's grown into his body, works with one of the best camps. So yeah, I think it could be competitive. I get why some people are looking at the Rzepecki side because Zaynukov, I think, is going to tend to fight close with some guys, but I think this is one where Chanko can get the win. I just think he's proven he can keep up that pace for 3 rounds, whereas Becky's not going to drown him. And at least for the first 2 rounds, I think just the heaviness, the intent, and the volume that's coming from him against a younger guy who is going to be a little smaller, hasn't seen the bright lights, hasn't worked with the guys that Chanko's worked with. I think it's just a little too much right now. I consider Rzepecki on spread, but I think I'm going to pass on this fight overall. Wait and see if we can get a different spot where Chanko is a big favorite against someone that has a good shot against him. I think Rzepecki can be fine in the future, but I want to see a little more from him. I think this is a little early for such a young guy to be put in the UFC against a guy who might not have much MMA, UFC experience, but a guy who is a seasoned combatant. So yeah, give me Magomed Zaynukov here, Chanko by, I'll say decision. A 24-year-old. I mean, maybe I knock his athleticism, but these younger guys tend to be pretty durable. And of course, being undefeated, he's never been finished before as a pro. So give me Chanko by decision in this one. All right, for some reason here we've got a PFL Tour heavyweight matchup with Rizvan Kuniev taking on Tyrell Fortune. Uh, I'm a bit puzzled by this matchmaking. Kuniev has fought two guys higher level than Fortune and arguably beat them both. Did beat Jailton Almeida for sure. I thought he beat Curtis Blades too. So giving him Tyrell Fortune coming off the Marcin Tybura win, a close decision win, which actually had the weird Tybura getting his hand raised in the octagon, and then they realized they misread it or whatever, and had to bring Fortune back in. I'll start with Kuniev. I like him. We backed him as dog of the week against Almeida in that matchup. Guy's got a solid wrestling base. He throws hard boxing combinations with good intent. Like I said, I thought he beat Curtis Blades in a close matchup there. Blades obviously having been a perennial top guy. And then Jailton Almeida, who's very difficult to deal with on the ground, forced him into a slow clinch striking match and was able to get the job done there against a tricky guy in Almeida. I mean, Almeida really ran through most guys in the UFC, so even making it competitive with him, I mean, the only guys we've really seen do it, Volkov and Curtis Blades, Curtis Blades was even getting dominated on the ground by him. Tyrell Fortune on the other side, guy's a decent athlete, solid boxing, bit of a wrestling background, coming out of Bellator. He got a couple finishes on the regional scene and kind of relied on that athleticism to win like I said, a close decision against Marcin Tybura. I don't really know how high a ceiling he has in the weight class. There's just, with respect, nothing exceptional about him. He's 36 years old. I haven't seen much improvement. He's not the most durable guy. He's been finished in the first round by lower level opponents before. So overall, I'm not overly high on Tyrell Fortune. I think he is going to be able to beat a lot of these blobbier heavyweights just because, like I said, he is a decent athlete, especially for the division. And I think on that can take you places, especially when you have just a bit of everything. Like I said, he has decent wrestling, decent boxing. He can hang around in the rankings. But when I look at this matchup, I've already said I'm quite high on Rizvan Kuniev. He's taken on two very good fighters already. And I don't really see where Fortune has the advantage here. I think Kuniev's the better boxer, the better wrestler, younger, more, I say Fortune's a decent athlete. I don't know that he even sticks out athleticism-wise against Kuniev. Kuniev's a pretty athletic heavyweight too, very strong hips, always good cardio. So I just struggle to really see a clear and consistent path for Fortune here. I think Kuniev has the finishing upside with more power in his hands and he's more durable. And I think he has the decision upside because he's active throughout. I don't think Fortune can have wrestling success. I think Kuniev could even have wrestling success if he wants to. I don't think he's going to. I think generally it's going to be a boxing match where I just think Kuniev's faster, more powerful, and more durable. So give me Rizvan Kuniev here. Give him to me by decision. All right, we got the featured prelim here. Another heavyweight matchup as Valter Walker takes on Thomas the Train Petersen. We'll start with Valter Walker here. This is a guy who's gone on, it probably is the craziest run just of like a single technique being used over and over in MMA history. 4 straight first round heel hook submission victories ever since losing his UFC debut to Lucas Brzeski. He just has decided to become a specialist. I mean, he took on Junior Tafa, which, by the way, getting him to pick him in that fight was insane looking back. Junior Tafa against anyone with decent grappling is to pick him. Whoa. And late in the first round there, right at the end, he decided to go for a heel hook without much time left. I'm assuming he was going for the low risk, thinking he might lose position, and he discovered that this works and he's pretty good at it. So he got it there, and then much quicker in the next 3 fights, a minute 17 against Dontel Mays, under a minute against Kennedy and Zichukwu, and last time against short notice Louis Sutherland, about a minute and a half. So a specialist is one way to put it. It's quite impressive how he's done it. although that being said, I just listed the names, and when you hear, Junior Tafa, Kennedy Nzechukwu, Louis Sutherland, and Don'Tale Mays, if you picked 4 guys to heel hook, they're probably pretty high on that list. So I do still have a lot of questions. I think it's fair when you go back to his debut and he struggled to get the grappling going against Lucas Brzeski. I think there's definitely still concerns about how Valter Walker deals with extended fights, how his striking actually looks, how good he is against someone with capable wrestling. I mean, the best wrestler out of the guys that I just listed, I would think it's Don'Tale Mays, maybe because Louis Sutherland had the Tuivasa performance where he just beach wailed on top of him. You could say him, but none of these guys are half decent wrestlers or grapplers whatsoever. So, you do have to kind of put that asterisk. And then this matchup now, he's got Thomas Petersen. And I've always felt Thomas Petersen was kind of underrated. Last fight, it felt like the whole world was picking Guilherme Pat against him, and I felt like it was a very even matchup, which it played out to be. And Petersen even won the fight, nearly finishing Guilherme Pat in the 3rd round, knocking him down, getting on top, and just completely dominating that one. Outside of that, his only other wins are Magomed Usman and Don'Tale Mays. And if I'm going to criticize Valter Walker's level of competition, I have to criticize that, as well as the 1st round knockout loss to Shamil Gaziev, which was a really bad look, and then the rough 3rd round knockout loss to Vitor Petrino. So one thing I will say, he's definitely competed with a higher level of competition. I think Petrino beats everyone that Valter Walker's fought. I think Gaziev probably beats everyone that Valter Walker's fought too. So I don't know how much that means. Guilherme Pat, I'm definitely not as high on him as some are. I don't really know where people stand on him after that performance. I know some people really liked him going into the Thomas Petersen fight, and Magomed Usman. But I mean, when I look at Petersen, his skill set's cardio and wrestling for the most part. Definitely not the most dangerous striking, but he did manage to drop Guilherme Pat. I feel like he's still getting better, even though he's over 30. A lot of heavyweights grow into this. I didn't even mention how young Valter Walker is, which is an important note for this fight. But yeah, when I look at the stylistics, I think, my questions about Valter Walker are how he's going to handle a guy who's a credentialed wrestler who can keep a pace for 3 rounds. And they've handed him an opponent who is a somewhat credentialed wrestler who can keep a pace for 3 rounds. So I took Thomas Petersen at plus 165. I know some real sharp guys got him at over plus 200 earlier in the week, plus 230 for some. I was talking to Tyler Breadbets on Twitter. He replied to my bet saying he got plus 230. So shout out to him and all the other sharp dudes who took that at a much better line than I did. Although, as much as everyone on Twitter hated that bet, got some real confidence-inspiring comments on that one. The market continued to move against Valter Walker, so take what you will from that. I think everybody who's been around long enough knows that when the Twitter crowd really loves or really hates a bet, it's probably going the other way. So I'm glad the market continued to agree with me. It seems like all the sharp people that are putting the smart money down have the same questions I do about how Valter Walker is going to deal with Thomas Petersen. I think it's an interesting fight. I think obviously the submission threat, the finishing threat in general is on the side of Walker. But if this extends past the 1st round, I don't know. Can Valter Walker get on top and stay on top of Thomas Petersen? Can he even outstrike Thomas Petersen? Is it just going to turn into a close clinch fest? It's just, I can quite easily see after a competitive 1st round, Thomas Petersen being the guy who is able to get on top, push the pace, and definitely win the 3rd round. Even outstrike here, because Valter Walker definitely not much of a striker at all. Hasn't shown any of that. So yeah, I took Thomas Petersen here plus 165. That's going to be my underdog best bet of the week. I just think there's too many questions about Valter Walker handling this certain stylistic matchup to not take him at that. I'd be a little more hesitant now at the plus 140. I was already hesitant at the plus 165 because of how much it's moved down. At some point, all the value is going to get milked out of that line. So, yeah, be cautious, but I'd say anything over plus 150, I would say is good enough for me. So yeah, that's my underdog best bet of the week. Give me Thomas Petersen. I'll say he gets it done by decision. All right, another debutant in here as Dustin Jacoby takes on the undefeated Mohamed Said. So I'll start by talking about Jacoby. This is, I feel like, a perennially underrated guy, but somehow, in everyone's opinion, just maybe that is the worst way to possibly put it. He's a guy that fans know and respect, is a good competitive fighter who can compete with guys in the lower end of the rankings. He's, fought with Khalil Roundtree, got robbed, and, fought Alonzo Menafield, who I think, he's shown time and time again that he'll take out all these unranked guys, fought him competitive. And since the loss to Dominic Reyes, where he got caught early, he's managed wins over Vitor Petrino, Bruno Lopez, and Julius Walker, all by knockout. So this guy is kind of getting disrespected here with this debut matchup. Obviously, he's old, and there are questions about how his durability is going to hold up. He was getting dumped by Julius Juicebox Walker in the last fight. He was losing to Petrino before getting that knockout. But at the end of the day, you have to respect the result, I think, and I would have liked to see him get a little better matchup than this with the dues he's paid. Like I said, I always have felt bad because of that Roundtree robbery. I mean, look at where Roundtree went just a couple fights after that, and Jacoby beat him. I mean, I haven't talked to anyone that has looked back at that fight and gone like, hey, maybe Roundtree rounds 2 and 3, like, just Jacoby should have got his hand raised there. But that being said, I do think it's worth noting a bit of the concerns with him slowing down over time, not looking great against Julius Walker in his last fight before catching him. Walker, though, again, I've said before, I think he's on the lower level of things. Same with Bruno Lopez, who gets knocked out by most of the guys he fights, and Vitor Petrino, we had also seen blow it before, although that was still a beautiful shot. That was a very impressive performance. On the other side, Mohamed Said, watched this guy, and I gotta say, one of his fights has my favorite regional setup ever, where he's fighting the guy on a basketball court. They just set up the octagon in the middle of like a high school gym or something. Awesome, love it. Landed clean shin to chin on a dude in that, and didn't even knock him clean out. The guy kept fighting. But yeah, Mohamed Said's a good technical kickboxer. He's got a really strong rear leg, decent power in his hands. He's got that nice big overhand right in his last fight. And I find it hard to read him. I said it to someone I was talking to earlier this week. He fights like someone who's like super fast twitchy, and then you just watch like his kicks in his hands, and it doesn't really look that fast. Uh, so I don't know overall what to make of him. He seems to have a competent ground game, cardio. He's been to decision, but obviously mainly a kickboxer. Like I said about that rear back leg is going to be his best weapon, and he comes in 30 years of age. Overall, to pick this one, I think it's tempting, and I think a lot of people are just picking against Jacoby because it's like, all right, the time's running out for him. Eventually, one of these younger guys is gonna get the better of him. But I don't really know. I don't know if this Mohamed Said guy is as good as a lot of the guys he's fought in the past. Obviously, I said I don't think Julius Walker is the highest level, and sure, he had some success, but with the wrestling, I don't think Mohamed Said's going to come out here and dump Dustin Jacoby on his head. I think it's going to be a striking match, and in a striking match, it's been pretty hard to beat Dustin Jacoby without consistently hurting him. So the question really becomes, can Mohamed Said consistently hurt Dustin Jacoby? Will his power translate? And overall, I'm just not that confident. I'd rather wait and see. I don't think plus 140 fading Dustin Jacoby is some opportunity of a lifetime. At the end of the day, it might end up being a decent bet. Mohamed Said might end up winning. I acknowledge that there is the possibility that this is the fight where everything goes for Jacoby because, that decline is coming. But at plus 140, I'm just not tempted enough here. I think the value's definitely been juiced to this line maybe earlier in the week when it was plus 180. But people touched it. People decided to go against Dustin Jacoby. I think milk the value out. And now I'm just going to wait and see. And I'm going to lean Dustin Jacoby. Just go with the experienced veteran who has had the market come down against him. I'll say he takes a decision win here in a competitive fight. And with this one, I'm kind of surprised it's a prelim matchup here at welterweight with some decent name value as Santiago Ponzinibbio takes on Sam Patterson. We'll talk Ponzinibbio first. A while back when I first got into MMA, he was coming up as the next big thing, knocking out Neil Magny in main events, this super Argentinian striker that was coming up. And then, took some time off with the injuries, came back and was knocked out by Li Jingliang and just never really managed to come back the same level of explosive fighter that he started off with. He had a couple close decisions, the Michelle Pereira fight, split decision. And then, he came out, got the win over Alex Morono, but now when he's fighting anybody with any decent pop in their hands, he tends to go down. Kevin Holland put him down with a backfist shot. Daniel Rodriguez put him out late in the third. Muslim Salikov got the decision against him, didn't put him out there. And his only win in his last four was Carlston Harris, who we've seen just doesn't have a striking threat. So I'm very concerned about Ponzinibbio's durability here. He's coming off a big layoff here at almost 40 years old, so I'm not confident that it's going to improve even with the layoff. I don't think chins come back like that when you're at that age. Even, I mean, it doesn't hurt, obviously, but your chin's going to deteriorate with age as much as it's going to recover. So I don't think he's going to come back and have a better chin than he had against D-Rod or Kevin Holland. And when you're talking about fighting a guy like Sam Patterson, who I've been pretty high on over recent years, this guy's a dangerous finisher. He got a bunch of first round knockouts in a row, and not against a couple of bums either. Trey Waters was decent competition. A lot of people were high on Danny Barlow when we cashed on Sam Patterson as the dog of the week there. So I quite like Sam Patterson. I think he's shown that he's very dangerous offensively. The chin is always going to be a bit of a concern. And his last performance against Michael Venom Page was just a weird one. I mean, we can talk about that, but it's such an unbelievably different stylistic matchup that I don't even see the point. And his submission game, obviously elite as well when he's able to get on top on the ground, just slice through Kiefer Crosby and Johan Lanus both in the first round. So yeah, I think Sam Patterson very well rounded offensively. He's a finisher quick too. He got it done 4 straight times in the first round in a row there. So I look at this matchup and I just have a hard time seeing Santiago Ponzinibbio hold up early. I mean, even going back to the Michelle Pereira fight, he was getting outgunned early there. And I think if he's just overmatched in the power department, Patterson's going to be faster than him, more technical. He's going to just keep touching him. And I don't trust Santiago Ponzinibbio to survive this. I think if he goes down, Sam Patterson's going to jump on top of him. He can capitalize with a submission after he hurts him, or he can just pound away and get the finish. One way or another, my prediction for this one is going to be Sam Patterson to get back in the win column and get his 5th first-round finish in the last 6 fights. All right, so in this one, we got lightweights Ismael Bonfim taking on Axel Sola in a fun matchup. Now, Bonfim, when you look at him, I think a lot of people look at his UFC career and it's been a bust since the debut. I think that debut generated a lot of hype. He destroyed Terrence McKinney, absolutely embarrassed him from bell to bell, which I mean, well, was half the fight, bell to first round bell, and then not quite second round bell. But yeah, I mean, he showed good boxing in that one, good defensive skills. He's shown good wrestling against Vince Pichel, even though it was Vince Pichel. Problem is, he's just been very inconsistent, a little bit flaky. You look at the performance against Benoit Saint-Denis, it was terrible. He looked like thought he could just bully him and wound up just getting absolutely smoked, getting slammed with body kicks, the back taken and choked out. And then there's other performances. The Nazim Sadikov one, he looked fine early, but as soon as Sadikov landed one good shot, the fight was done. Just Bonfim checked out completely after that shot landed, wasn't trying to put offense up of his own. And then last time against Chris Padilla when he had a tough weight cut, just kind of shut down there in the second round, and Padilla was able to get him out of there. On the other side, Axel Sola is coming off a war where he did slow down, but he had a good start against Mason Jones, and a lot of people are going to slow down against Mason Jones because he sets a ridiculous pace. Talk about those fight intangibles, being able to take a punch and keep pushing a pace. It's like what Tommy McMillan did. Mason Jones has been doing that for forever with a high level ground game mixed into. So I think that was a big experience lesson for Axel Sola because we did. As much as he got the late finish in the Rizvan fight, I still the pace slowed down drastically in that one. So as much as I don't think Axel Sola has cardio issues where he's gonna death gas and start getting beat up brutally in the third rounds, I don't think, despite his 5 round experience, he has elite ability to push a pace. Good physically and very well rounded skill set wise. Good technical, sharp kickboxing, and the ground game's pretty strong too. He, as much as I say Mason Jones is good on the ground, Axel Sola was able to have some success with takedowns in that fight. So I thought that was a pretty good look. Uh, so with that, there was part of me that was tempted to take Bonfim at the plus 170 or better. Just because I think if he does show up, it's a relatively even fight skill set wise. I think he can box with Sola. I think he can wrestle with Sola. I think even if he slows down a bit, Sola's pace is going to slow with it. So I can see a world where Bonfim makes this a very competitive matchup. But at the end of the day, I don't know which Bonfim we're getting, and I know that there's a version of Bonfim that's going to go out there, get cracked, and fold, check out of the fight. We've seen it happen before. We saw it against Zaynukov. That was a really telling performance to me because as much as nobody likes saying fighters quit. Nobody wants to do that because I'm not taking that head kick and keeping going. I'm curling up and stopping. But at the end of the day, when you're a professional fighter, I have an expectation that you're going to be able to take damage, and especially when I'm risking my money on you or advocating for other people to risk their money on you, I need to see a bit more consistency. I need to see a bit more will to fight when you're fighting a guy like Axel Sola who is dangerous, who's shown he can have those big moments. Landed that huge spinning elbow against Mason Jones. And if he has a moment even close to similar like that against Ismael Bonfim, I'm not confident that Bonfim's going to survive. So with that, I mean, again, there's not too much confidence in this pick because if Bonfim shows up, then I think it's very competitive. I just have no faith in Bonfim to show any form of consistency to start putting it together now. He's gonna have good performances if he stays around in the UFC, which he might not if he loses this one. Um, but I don't know. When you're giving me a guy with all the physical advantages like Axel Sola, I understand why he's the favorite. I agree with it, so I'm gonna pick him, and I'm gonna pick him by decision here. I don't think he's the most dangerous, but I think he can hurt Bonfim and kind of give him pause as far as entering across the 3 rounds. Another one at lightweight here as the undefeated Nurullo Aliev takes on Mike Beast Boy Davis. This is a good one. Aliev has shown really strong wrestling, some decent striking. He's just 25 coming into this one at 11-0, 3-0 in the UFC with decisions over Rafael Alves, Joe Selecki, and Shamrock. Where he's shown he can wrestle and control strong and dangerous grapplers. I mean, Shamrock obviously not the most, but the Joe Selecki win I thought was really good for how young he is. And against Shamrock, he did, dominate him. He gave him trip on the airlines with the takedowns, beat him up in the striking. So I thought it was a good bit of experience and a good display of his skill set just to use more tools in the octagon. On the other side, a very aggressive guy with a lot of tools himself is Mike Davis, coming off the knockout win over Mitch Ramirez. He's shown some strong grappling skills, had the back for the entire first round of that fight. Did have the concerning performance against Frostziam. There was some weird stories about paint fumes in the back in that one. I don't know. All I know is Frostziam dominated him in the grappling in that one. Although, not to say he's not a skilled grappler, as when he goes up against guys like Natan Levy, he got the submission. He was able to beat Vyacheslav Borshev there. And then going back way to the Fight Island days before he had a bit of a layoff, he took on Mason Jones and had a super competitive fight there, showing he can take damage and mix the martial arts together quite well. As far as this matchup goes, I'm going to pick Aliev by decision here, and I'll tell you why. I just think he's more responsible with his techniques. I think the pace of Mike Davis can give him trouble come the third round, but I think through the first 2 rounds, I think Aliev's going to be more defensively responsible on the feet. I think he's going to be the one who's stronger in the grappling, being able to initiate the takedowns and get control time on Davis. Davis does have the submission threat. He's a better jiu-jitsu player. That being said, I don't expect that to really come into play against Aliev, who is very strong on top, going to be a very difficult guy to submit. So overall, I just see Aliev using the technical advantage, using the wrestling to control, staying safer on the feet, and managing so that that pace of Davis doesn't overwhelm him, and he takes home yet another decision win here, as Mike Davis has been pretty durable, especially over his UFC career, going to decision that wild fight with Sadiq Youssef back on Contender Series and only losing inside the distance to Gilbert Burns in his debut. So yeah, give me Nurullo Aliev here. Give him to me by decision. And the last fight I'm going to go over here, the first fight on the card, Abdul Hussein taking on Cody Gibson. Start here talking about Gibson. He is the veteran. He came off the Ultimate Fighter, where he was on the season that had veterans taking on newcomers, and he earned a second shot in the UFC by reaching the final and going to war with Brad Katona. And his second UFC stint hasn't been terrible. I mean, he lost the first fight to Miles John's relatively competitive decision, was able to get wins over lower level guys, Brian Kellenher and Chad Ellinger, and Hellinger. And then in his last couple fights, he's been finished by Damon Blackshear, and most recently got taken out in just 21 seconds by Arichi Lang. So I think the durability is a bit of a concern here. Gibson's, I mean, he's a well-rounded veteran who has always been able to put on a good pace with his boxing, and he's never been a complete fish out of water on the ground. Not necessarily going to dominate most people with his wrestling, but he's got a nice arm triangle sub and a wrestling background as well. That being said, now at 38 years of age, coming off back-to-back finish losses, and also having never really competed with the upper echelon or been on that level, there's definitely some concerns here about backing him. And when you're talking about facing a guy like Abdul Hussein, this is a guy I'm higher on than a lot of the guys coming in. He's competed with decent competition on the regional scene, but it's really more what he's shown in his game. He showed early on that he can maintain a grappling pace through fights, keep taking guys down over and over, wearing them down and getting finishes. And then his striking has evolved tremendously as well. He's coming off a knockout win over Tyson Nam. Still at just 28 too. He's got good experience on the regional scene. Has a decision loss to Magomed Ankalaev. And like I said, he's fought UFC veteran Tyson Nam in his last fight. Although he was 42, but he was still, guys weren't knocking him out like Hussein did. So this guy, he's working on the striking, getting some real power in the hands now. His ground and pound is good when he gets on top in dominant positions like mount. He's good at finishing. And like I said, he can keep going for those takedowns. He'll keep wearing on you with that pace. So with that, I'm picking Hussein here. I think he's going to eventually find a finish against Cody Gibson here. I think he's just, Gibson coming off back-to-back finish losses, now being 38, and Hussein is just getting better and better with each performance. So I don't know. It'll probably be a knockout, probably. I think he probably tries to go get the wrestling going in this one, just because Gibson, I think, is a bit more dangerous of a striker. That reach and stuff could give him trouble. So I'll say Hussein gets him down, drags him, wears him down through the second round, and gets a third round ground and pound stoppage. All right, that's all I got for you this card. The only bet I've placed so far is the underdog best bet of the week in Thomas Petersen. Keep an eye on my socials for the prop play of the week coming later. That's at Doug Las Vegas Bets. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. Leave a like, leave a comment. All that stuff really helps me out. We just passed 50 subscribers, and I'm trying to keep growing the channel. So all that stuff is very greatly appreciated. I hope you guys enjoy the fights this weekend, and I will catch you next time.